With plans for our World Confectionery Conference 2023 edition fast taking shape, we catch up with Francesco Tramontin of Ferrero to discuss his involvement once again next year as he reflects on this year's event, which drew an audience from across the spectrum of the confectionery, snacks and bakery markets, and looks to do the same again for our 2023 edition.
Well, I really enjoyed the diversity in the audience and the diversity of discussions on stage. I think that's one of the beauty of the confectionery sector. It is exactly that. I mean, you have a combination of the big and small, the technical and kind of the more extrovert and fleshier elements of the very nice products we sell and the joy we give to people. So I did find that reflected in your events very well. Again, it shifts from being very concrete and technical and maybe more general interventions like I think mine was around the external environment. So I really liked it because I think it represents us as a company and as a sector.
Glad to hear that's the case, and looking to the event for 2023, how are you feeling about the prospect of being involved once again?
Yeah, I'm very excited because, as I was saying, I got a very good energy out of the interaction. I think it's been just few months since I've spoken at your events, so the outlook is the same. I've explained. I mean, I think a very intense external environment. I mean, that's my job in Ferrero is public affairs. So that's what I can best contribute is try to dissect that complexity of the external environment, especially the policy and stakeholder environment. And we've definitely seen that even more intensifying in the past few months since I intervened at your event. And so, yeah, really looking forward to how we will get when it will be time to be back on stage again in Brussels. But there's a few themes which I think will be confirmed, such as sustainability, resilience of supply chains, and overall in general, I think EU policy will be all over the map for the confectionery sector.
Fantastic stuff. And as you're alluding to there, indeed, the industry is facing a number of challenges in terms of supply chains and the energy crisis and ingredients prices going up. So can you speak in general terms about how Ferrero has been tackling some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think you need to have a very healthy business to get through the situation we are all facing, and you need to have a long-term approach to to the business to cope with big shocks like the one we are facing. And again, I'll generalize for the industry when I talk about long-term approach, is a long-term approach in terms of the two main stakeholders, and I think you've heard me saying that again. For a business like ours, our main stakeholders are on one side the people buying our products, on the other side the farmers. If you have a long-term approach, I mean, obviously, big issues like increasing raw materials or energy costs have a big impact on our business. But the reality, if we keep those connections, the people producing our ingredients and the people buying our products, you can get through those shocks and adapt the business accordingly. So I think we are in a good place as far as Ferrero is concerned, and I would say the sector is, generally speaking, a good place in terms of these very two important stakeholders. Is it an easy time? Not at all. Is it a time where more and more we look for concerted solutions with public authorities? Of course we do, because the nature of these issues is much bigger than any single company can tackle.
Of course. No, thank you for that, Francesco. And just looking back on one of the topics we covered in the Q&A in particular, looking at tests in terms of legislation that's coming forward, and you were talking about the EU frameworks, the due diligence laws that are going to be coming forward now. How optimistic are you that they will make an impact, given that they've been given preliminary approval in the EU Parliament?
I think if we look at the bundle of the piece of legislation that will affect the way we buy our products, not only the procurement part, but as presented as the one you're referring to, so the regulation on deforestation, which there is an agreement, so we are waiting for the final text, but we expect it to be applied as from next year. Then we'll have already started debate on the diligence directive, and there's a regulation on forced labor. The three of them will be very impactful for the whole sector, especially for the supply chain part. I mean, two of them actually are not only on ingredients, but across the board. But we look at the impact on our raw materials. As said, as a sector and as a company, we are looking at that in overall with favor. I think it will kind of consolidate a set of good practices across the sector. If we just talk about the one that has just been approved, this idea of really working on traceability across key raw materials is very important, and a risk-based approach and due diligence approach on supply chains, which is something we do, and making it the industry norm is overall very good. So this is happening. It will be a big stretch for the industry and for authorities actually having to control the industry, because the timing that has been set, I think that they talk about 1 year and a half, if I'm not wrong, implementation. It's very ambitious. And to a certain extent, it's good. So we don't dilute things too much, but it means we need to get to work. And it will be refreshing to actually talk less about principles, but how we are going to make it work. So, and I'll do an example. I mean, for us, I mean, more or less, and for key raw materials like palm oil and cocoa, I think we already adopted that approach. I mean, we are fully traceable. We have standards in place in the way we source. In case of cocoa, we mostly buy our cocoa direct. So we have a very, very controlled approach of our value chain. Yet, I mean, we'll have to provide certain guarantees and in some cases documentation to authorities. We'll need to gear up for controls. It has an operational feel to it, which is going to be new. And as I was saying, also for authorities that all of a sudden will need to enforce and make this legislation credible. All this on top of other two pieces of legislation that will be discussed from a political perspective, which are going to be as impactful. So very intense, but in a good direction, as I think already reflected at your event.
Fantastic. Now, glad to hear that's the case. And do you think that it is very much a question of companies working together to bring about change in terms?
Yeah, I think there's an element of company working together, so a sector approach. And again, together, it's not only within peers, but especially with suppliers. So because every value chain has its own dynamic, while the regulation is horizontal. So the way you go about palm oil is very different from the way you go about cocoa. So I think that element of cooperation and finding practical solution, the point of actually implementing, as I was saying before, will become reality in very sectorial value chain approaches, which are missing somehow in the regulation, but they are foreseen. So this is one element. The other element is not only companies working together, but the way we work with authorities. So I already referred to the authorities that will, in member states, that will have to control and apply these new rules. And this is a very important one, but you know, these ingredients are produced elsewhere in the world. And actually having a constructive engagement with producing countries is quite critical. In cocoa, and we've discussed it also at this year event, it's happening. It's not easy, and you know, we've had some up and downs, but somehow the producing countries are taking ownership of the sustainability journey, and they are engaging companies like ours and some of the peers, and they are somehow mediating these higher requirements in consuming countries with their wanting to own their standard of production. For other raw materials, this will have to happen. We still see a lot of defensiveness when it comes to the new EU regulation, and this is something we'll need to work out. So I'm already anticipating what may be one of the themes we'll discuss.
Well, certainly some very interesting times ahead on that front. So thank you for those reflections. But just turning to your own involvement with the company, you've been with the business a little while now. So are you enjoying it as much now as when you started, and what keeps you driving forward with it?
Well, so it's been 2 years now with Ferrero, but as you know, I kind of am a long-time worker for the sector. So the passion remains. I would say it's even bigger in these troubled times because, as I was alluding to at the beginning, I do feel it is a sector that retains those strong links and very emotional links with the supply chain on one side, but first and foremost with the people buying our products. And I think that actually provides always inspiration to find solutions, even in when you work in public policy like I do. I think it's a sector that's easy to explain in spite of its complexity and diversity. And that makes it always compelling and help us navigate troubled times like this one. So passion remains, and I will not go away.
Thank you for that. And just as a business, obviously you're involved with the policy side very much, but Ferrero, the brand itself, has got some very strong heritage in terms of its confectionery. There was a Rocher in particular, and many others. Nutella behind you there. How special is the business? In terms of the products this time of year, it's a very special season for the industry and your company in particular.
Yeah, no, this is where, as I was saying, this is where our connection with the consumers and the emotional part of what our brands bring to everyday life really comes to life. I mean, in the case of Ferrero, I would say this is even more enhanced by the nature itself of the company. I mean, in spite of the size, we are still a family-owned business, which is um, where our strength is on what unique products that have been invented in the companies and by people in the companies. And so, as you're suggesting, these are the times of the year where our products get really close to people. And so it is a special moment.
Absolutely. And will you be enjoying some confectionery with your family this Christmas at all, by any chance?
Absolutely, yes. I will be driving from Brussels to Italy actually tomorrow, and I bring my chocolate boxes with me.
Excellent. And so you're in good spirits looking ahead for 2023. Things are looking in a pretty good shape for the business despite the challenges that are out there, would you say?
Yeah, business is looking good in spite of the challenges. As I was saying, kind of the fundamentals are good to keep on going for the long term. As you may have heard, the business is investing on its own portfolio, but also we are looking beyond. I mean, the company has made some acquisitions, and yeah, so things are looking good in getting the machine going, but also kind of expanding and looking at new challenges also within the business. We keep on evolving.